20세기 최고의 CEO이자 제너럴 일렉트릭의 최고 경영자였던 잭 웰치를 만나보십시오.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke.
웰치 회장은 엄청난 숫자를 대수롭지 않게 말하는군요.
Business is a game. It's not some serious, pompous ass thing.
자신만의 게임에서 최고의 자리를 차지한 잭 웰치 회장과 만나보십시오.
Exclusive national funding for this program is provided by A.T. Kearney, a global management consulting firm helping businesses achieve results with capabilities in strategy, operations, and technology. A.T. Kearney, right there with you.
기업을 재창조하는 사람들, 생각을 바꾸는 사람들, 사람들을 이끄는 지도자들, 남들과는 다른 선택을 내릴 줄 아는 사람들. 이런 사람들은 산업을 발전시키고 사회를 변하게 만듭니다. 그리고 젊은이들에게 용기를 주죠. 바로 이들 CEO들이 도전에 맞서 성공을 이끌어낸 솔직한 경험담을 여러분께 들려드리는 시간, CEO 익스체인지입니다. 사회자 스튜어트 바니를 만나보시죠.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to CEO Exchange. I'm Stuart Varney. This is the second time that CEO Exchange has come to the University of Michigan Business School, and it's truly great to be here. My guest tonight is the most respected chief executive of the 20th century, Jack Welch, former chairman of General Electric and former CEO of GE. Jack Welch has been called both one of the toughest bosses in America and one of the most supportive as well. He climbed to the top of the complex corporate structure, and he got there by breaking just about every rule there is to break. From the day he took the reins, and that, by the way, was April Fool's Day in 1981, Mr. Welch went to work, fixing a company no one knew was broken. Back then, GE's net income was up 9% on revenues of nearly $2 billion. So what was wrong with that? According to Welch, just about everything was wrong with that. In 1981, GE did 1/5 of the business that it does today. And then it did it with 30% more people back then. I know you future MBAs like numbers, so here are a few more of them for you. Then, market value was $12 billion. It is $399 billion today. And lest we forget, $1 billion is $1,000 million. The stock price has skyrocketed more than 5,000% in the same period, returning to investors on average 25% a year. So, you may well ask, how did he do it? Tonight, we'll be speaking to Jack Welch about his years at General Electric, his view of leadership, and the personal side of the man who not only remade his company, but transformed himself from one of the most reviled CEOs of the 1980s to one of the most admired business leaders today.
The case for change in General Electric is absolutely clear.
1981년 잭 웰치가 제너럴 일렉트릭의 최고 경영자가 되자 다들 놀랐습니다. 그러나 그 모든 게 달라졌죠.
It's very hard to tinker with success, but Jack didn't just tinker with it. I mean, he went in there and broke the place.
웰치는 이미 발전소를 갖고 있던 회사를 인수해 규모를 줄이되 더욱더 강력하고 다양하게 만들었죠. 직원의 40%에 해당하는 17만 개의 일자리를 줄인 웰치는 중성자 잭이라는 악명 높은 별명을 얻게 됐습니다. 그 후로도 해마다 하위 10%의 직원들을 해고시켰죠.
We grade people on the bottom 10, middle 70, and top 20. And we do it every single year. We do it rigorously. Now people can move from the middle 70 to the top 20, and from the top 20 down to the middle 70.
웰치 회장은 회사를 강하게 만들기 위해 계열사를 시장에서 1위가 아니면 고치거나 팔아버렸습니다.
Now every one of those positions is a leader. Aircraft engine, power, medical, etc.
웰치 회장은 934개의 회사를 사들였죠.
Think how much wider, how much more engaging, how much more fun it is to work in this big laboratory.
이제 GE는 놀랄 만큼 여러 가지 분야를 다루고 있습니다. 그중에는 항공엔진, 발전기, 기관차, 의료장비, 가전제품과 금융업계뿐만 아니라 방송사인 MBC 같은 뜻밖의 계열사까지 포함되어 있죠.
High cash flow, growth, great people, pizzazz for GE. Why would you not be in it?
Well, we would have liked to have bought NBC in that period, but we didn't want to buy the whole. The whole was RCA, but he was bigger and he was able to absorb the whole thing and had a better vision than I did.
웰치 회장은 4가지 계획을 세웠습니다. 그중 하나는 품질 향상을 위한 6단계 시그마죠.
That defines our job. Finding a better way every day. Sounds like a slogan, but it's the way we work.
이제 수입의 40%는 대기화를 통해 외국에서 벌어들이는 겁니다. 현재 GE의 총수익 중 70%는 금융과 보험 부문이죠.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke. We've been adding one of those a year for the last 4 years.
최근에는 디지털화로 인터넷에 진출했고 잭 웰치는 이잭이라는 새로운 별명을 갖게 됐습니다.
I'd like to get some fresh thinking from you.
웰치 회장은 크로톤빌 리더십 센터에서 미래의 지도자들을 훈련시켰고 그곳에서는 어떤 직원들이라도 새로운 아이디어를 거침없이 내놓을 수 있죠.
Jack has really developed 400 hitters, and that's a talent I don't have.
제너럴 일렉트릭에서는 직원들에게 관료주의를 없애고 현실에 부딪히며 꿈을 키워가도록 격려합니다. 제너럴 일렉트릭은 가장 이상적인 회사가 됐고 웰치 역시 CEO의 모범이 되었죠. 그 비결이 뭘까요?
Great leadership skills, down to earth, feisty, lots of energy, a lot of edge, a lot of humility, yet a lot of pride.
친구들 사이에서조차도 웰치는 뛰어난 협상가입니다.
At times, you get burned. You wear your asbestos suit when you're seeing Jack, but you always know it is done because he believes so passionately in where he's going.
잭 웰치는 1960년 대학원을 나오자마자 제너럴 일렉트릭의 플라스틱 회사에서 일했습니다. 1년 후 남들과 같은 급료 때문에 관두려던 그에게 회사는 더 많은 자유를 약속했죠. 그 웰치는 고속 승진을 했고 1981년 치열한 경쟁 끝에 CEO에 오릅니다.
We're going to grow double digit this year. We're going to grow double digit next year.
2000년 웰치 회장은 1년에 걸쳐 또 다른 거대 기업인 한유엘을 인수하려는 시도를 했지만 EU 반독점 규정 때문에 무산됐습니다.
I consider it the right thing to do in the beginning, to take a swing at it, to fight like hell for it, and to walk was the right call.
2001년 9월에 웰치 회장은 은퇴했고 제너럴 일렉트릭은 시장 자금 면에서 가장 비싼 기업이 되었습니다. 그러나 그의 성공은 단순히 돈이 아닌 모든 면에서 본보기가 되죠.
Every one of us reached further, faster than we ever thought we could. And we loved hanging around with each other. And this corner grocery store of $130+ billion became a family business that thousands participated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Mr. Jack Welch.
Don't be exhausted.
"20 years at the top at General Electric. Let's talk about those years. GE has in fact been around for well over 100 years. You've been through 2 world wars, several recessions, 1 depression, crises of every kind, and you still come out on top. What is it that's unique about GE that you're on top and there's nobody else inside?"
Well, I think that if there's one characteristic of GE, it's been a focus on people. And more on people than on a specific business. And I think if you really realize that your core competency is developing human spirit and getting the best of people, you can survive most anything.
You started out at GE in 1981. 20 years since then. There was a recession in 81. There was a recession in 91. Some would say we're entering certainly a slowdown period or a recession right now. That's what, 3 or 4 years out of 20 years when we've had a contracting economy. The rest of the time, it was a growth economy, and some of the best years of growth we've ever seen in our lifetimes. I put it to you, I'm not going to say you were lucky in your timing.
Oh, I would.
Well, let me put it nicely and say you were fortunate in your timing at being at the top.
There's no question. There's no question at all. If you think you're going to get an argument with me over that. No, but I think you got to look at who were our competitors in those days. How many here have heard of Westinghouse? When I first became chairman, one of the requirements of the chairman at every board meeting was to show the quarterly results of GE compared to Westinghouse. So I rest my case.
When you took over, you were known as a rebel. You were known as someone who had an anti-established theory mentality. You hated bureaucracy.
I hope I still do.
And everybody knew it. Did Reginald Jones pick you as his successor because he knew you were going to change things and he knew things had to be changed?
I'd give him credit for that.
So you came into this and everybody knew you were going to change things around, standing on its head.
Well, I think he knew I was going to change things. I'm not sure he knew how much.
Did he approve?
Yes, to the day.
Did you start the changes immediately? First week on the job, first month, first year?
Pretty quickly, Stuart. Pretty quickly. And, look, change is awful. When the Wall Street Journal went from 2 sections to 3, most of us had trauma. Change is a very difficult thing. It has very little constituency. Change is something that people do not relish easily. And yet change is at the heart of what makes business vital. And so getting an organization to absolutely relish it, to want it, to see it as an opportunity, see it to jump on things. I was watching a television show this morning, CNBC, I might add.
Of course.
And a man was on from the Vail Ski Resorts. And in this terrible time and period that we're all suffering through, he talked about some moves his company was making. This morning, he just bought some rock resort properties. He bought several hotels at prices he never dreamt he could buy them at. Because the world thinks no one's going to travel again. That person made a bet. Somebody else who sold them made a bet that people won't travel again. He made a bet. People will travel again. We'll have to see how it all develops. No one knows for sure. But change made that opportunity possible.
You've clearly got a responsibility to your shareholders. You've clearly got a responsibility to your customers. You have a responsibility to make a profit, to gain market share, to be a robust, dynamic, growing business. Do you have social responsibility? Is Jack Welch's heart in making GE a socially responsible organization?
That's a motherhood question, first of all. Now let's go at what social responsibility really means, because it means different things to different people. I'll tell you what it means to me. Social responsibility means win. Become a winning company. Only a winning, socially responsible company, a winning company, highly profitable, can be socially responsible. Because its people aren't worried about their jobs. They're excited. They're energized. They give back. Why? Because they have time. They can focus. They can give back. If you're in a company where you're hanging on to your last nail and you're not sure about your job in the morning, you don't give back. When people are doing well, when people are winning, they give back. They have time to give. They have money to give. Bleeding hearts are not socially responsible. They don't have anything. So having a winning company is what your job is.
Nobody knows CEOs like other world-class CEOs, and we've lined up some questions from those world-class CEOs to ask directly to you. And the first question comes from a man who has called you, by the way, the Tiger Woods of management. That gentleman is Warren Buffett, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Berkshire Hathaway, and here's the question he's asking you.
Jack, if when you taken over General Electric 20 years ago, it had been owned by your family, so it was going to be run as a private company for the next 20 years. How would you have done things differently if you hadn't been in the public arena but had been reportable only to members of your family as to how the company was doing?
I can't think, honestly, Stuart, of any time that I've done anything that I did because we're a public company versus a family company. I did everything with everything I had in my body. I did it with all the integrity I thought I had. I never cut a corner. I never did a thing that I thought was out of line. I did it the best I knew how.
A private company, you could have done some things quietly. A public company, you've got all kinds of reporting duties.
I was never concerned about that.
No?
No.
Never want to keep things not quiet, but private.
Give me an example.
Strategy of some sort. Your acquisition strategy. Of course, you didn't lay that out as a public company, but you made it clear what your strategy was.
That I made clear in my annual reports every year. I wrote the annual report not to share owners, but to employees. I even dedicated to employees and share owners. Our largest share owners were our employees. So, look, you can tell everybody anything. It's in the doing it that counts. I mean, speeches don't mean much.
How about a quick, may I ask for a one-word response before we close out this discussion on just a couple of subjects. What do you think is the true function of a CEO?
Lead.
What is the most important quality, one word to describe, that a CEO brings to the table?
Passion.
What's the single biggest, most frequent mistake that CEOs make?
Only one word?
No, you can... Take your time, Jack. Take your time.
I think it's not recognizing that they're probably the last person to know what's going on.
Do you really think that the CEO is the last person to know what's going on?
In most cases.
Would you say that was true of yourself in the last 20 years?
In most cases. And one of the things that's absolutely critical, and we'll talk about it either now or later, is the CEO better appoint, if a CEO wants to drive a company in a direction and announces an initiative or anything like that, who he or she appoints to the job will tell everything about how serious they are about the effort. Because everyone in the organization can evaluate everyone in the organization. They know who the winners are and who they're not. And a CEO most often says, this is where we're going, and we're going to put Joe in charge. And Joe's got about 3 months to go to retirement, or Joe's been almost canned twice. And that, all of a sudden, kills the whole initiative.
Let's move on to Jack now, sir, who first met you before he was named the CEO of the Ford Motor Company. And here's his question.
Jack, after 40 years in the business, you've gone through some big winners and some big losers. And a lot of people probably would ask you to talk about failures and what you didn't do. What I'd like to do is ask you about your biggest success. What is it?
Without question, building in General Electric a meritocracy where it's all about unleashing people. The modern corporation where everyone counts. Where people come to work every day knowing we care about their idea regardless of the stripes. Where people are evaluated in a candid way, right between the eyes, where they stand. No phony appraisals. Because the cruelest thing you can do in life is that game where you appraise people over the course of their career. And then they get to be 55 and somebody calls them in and says, so long, we don't need you anymore. You're not very good. And they bring in 30 years of appraisals. Let's say they're just fine. So don't any of you think you're being kind managers, that you're being good people because you give nice appraisals. That's the cruelest thing you can do to a human being, is not let them know where they stand, what they need to do to improve, and if they can't improve, ask them to move on as early as possible. If business schools talk more about appraisals and how to do it and had courses on that, we'd be a lot better off. If human management became the major rather than quantitative calculations of strategy and this other nonsense became the issue, we'd be a hell of a lot better off, because your job is to build the best team. The reason why Michigan beats Illinois, damn it, every year, is they field a better team.
So, on that note, we're going to go to our audience. We have two professors in our audience today from the University of Michigan School of Business. Noah Tichy is director of the Global Leadership Program, and also he ran GE's Crotonville Leadership Center for 3 years. Professor, your question, please.
Hi, Jack.
I know.
I had the opportunity in the last 2 weeks to interview the 3 contenders for your job. Jim McNerney at 3M, Bob Nardelli at Home Depot, and last Friday, Jeff Immelt. And I asked them candidly about the succession process. And 2 of them gave you F's on the decision. 1 gave you an A. But in a world where a lot of blue chip companies have failed at having a successor, IBM had to go outside, Merck had to go outside, 3M, Home Depot, HP, you succeeded. What lessons are there for other CEOs and aspiring leaders for how to develop that leadership pipeline for succession?
Well, I think, as you know, Noel, you were part of starting it with us. You live it. I mean, we saw our job. One of the things that helps us in GE versus a single product company is you couldn't possibly know how to do a Seinfeld show, build a jet engine, do a CAT scanner, and build something else. So we don't have a problem knowing less about a particular business. Our skill has to be, can we pick the right people? So every day in GE, they say, is an appraisal. We appraise people in the hallway. We appraise them. Every day we're testing people in new environments. And so it becomes an obsession. People are obsession. I think my batting average has gone from, in the early days, 30 to 40% to something like 75 to 80% I'd give myself today. Still the hardest job in the world to be right all the time, and you're surprised all the time. I think, though, we started this process 6 years before, and we worked hard on it, and it was the most important decision of my life and the board's life in GE, and we took it that way, and we had some great candidates.
Thank you, Noel. Now we have a question from Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn is the M.E. Tracy Professor of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management. Bob.
Thank you. We could have an audience full of executives here listening to Jack Welch explain success and talk about those things like cutting the bottom 10% and all those tough policies at GE. And that could be a recipe for disaster. That is, if that's all they hear, and they don't have that commitment, that passion, that caring, that support, they'll go off, do those policies, and be a disaster.
I do believe that one of the mistakes made in this 20-70-10 thing you talked about, Professor, most companies, in downsizing, for example, in the times we're in now, will spend so much time, the HR people and the CEO, on worrying about the 10% that go. The most important thing for leadership in a time like this is to be fair to those people, to be sure it's not a surprise to them because they've had candidate appraisals, but more importantly, go hug the top people in the company. Go tell them you need them for the next game. A star is worth 5 to 10 average players. It's no different in business than it is on the football field down the street here. It's no different. And you've got to be sure that you take care of your stars all the time, in good times and in difficult times.
Professor Quinn was really all about leadership, and that's what we want to talk about it more. At Crotonville, that's your executive training center,
Right.
and people there that I've talked to say that you come on often like a professor, that you would have made a very good professor at a good school. All right? Can you give me a 30-second lesson in leadership?
I think that, first I'll talk about the qualities. I see in leadership 4 E's wrapped in a P. Energy. I look for energy in people. In a world that's moving as fast as this, you've got to have incredible energy. Secondly, I always look for people who could energize others, the second E. Because if you're a whirling dervish and you're not exciting others to your dream and opening them up to do things, your energy isn't worth anything. Third was edge. The person who could say yes or no and not maybe. Or not that damn manager who says, let's recycle that another time. Come back in a month. That's not what you want. You want yes or no. You don't have time for it. And then E, execute. Get it done. Deliver on what you say. And wrap that all in a big P. Passion. Care more than the next person.
Can leadership be acquired by anyone, or is it inherent in just a few people?
No, I think it's both. I think that there's some gene that gives people some degree of self-confidence, but I think it's all about life experiences. I think coming to the University of Michigan and getting an MBA is another notch of self-confidence. Some people get it their mother's knee. Some people get it by being valedictorian. Some people get it by being the best athlete. But it's always building a notch. I mean, for me, with a speech impediment, 40 years ago or 35 years ago, I had to give a speech and it was written. And God, I got sick before I went on the stage. Now I can go in front of 10,000 people and stammer all over the place and feel very comfortable doing it.
How do you give people back their self-confidence once they've lost it? You as a leader, can you restore it?
It's very hard. I think it's one of the hardest things in the world. You try, but when people get in that vortex, you've seen it, that awful vortex of losing self-confidence, I almost always believe they're better off going to a new environment and starting again. But my experience is, if you lose it among a peer group, it's one of the worst things you see in business.
As a leader, how do you motivate? Is fear a part of your armory?
No.
Rewards of money, perhaps?
Rewards include in the soul, with better jobs, job content, in the wallet, with more money, with more options, with more. But mainly what you want to do as a leader is you want to give people a chance to take a swing. Your job is to let them take a swing so they can build the confidence. You'll never build a great team if you always give them the incremental assignment. You want them to stretch and try to do something that they didn't think they could do. And then when they do it, they've got a whole different level of self-confidence.
My friends at NBC and CNBC tell me that you reach often right down the totem pole. You don't just talk to the top brass at those organizations. You come right down to individual anchors and producers and chastise them sometimes on their ratings on occasions. Is that part of your style, to reach right down the totem pole as far as possible?
Well, I would say encourage them to do better rather than chastise them on their ratings.
Let's move on to another CEO question. Boeing, as you obviously know, is the world's #1 aerospace company. It's a very big customer for GE jet engines and its division there. This next question comes from Boeing's chairman and chief executive, Phil Condit. And here's
I will be very careful with this answer.
Jack, we built the Boeing Leadership Center with a lot of Crotonville mixed into it. It has been a tremendous, powerful thing for Boeing. Why is it you think that a lot of other companies haven't modeled and used the Crotonville example?
That was a lot easier than I thought it might be. You know, I don't know why. I think going forward, I think if you're going to have change in a company, the only way to have change is to have an educational center. The only way to do it is to relentlessly communicate the need for change, the rationale for change. And you have to do it over, through, and around the organization. One of the things that happens in many companies as people start to change, there are resistors to change. And the resistors will take any message and spin it just a little bit, so that what you say and what you mean will be told just a little differently to the next layer, and then the next layer. I found, and Noel Tishy, who spoke earlier, was at Crotonville in the early days, found so often that the message, you'd go to Crotonville and have people be nodding and understanding it all. That isn't what they heard back at the office in the early days, because the resistors were fighting the change desperately. Don't forget, when you're taking out bureaucracy, a bureaucracy that thrives in that environment, there's not a lot of happy campers there. So unless the resistors are dealt with, I think an education center allows leadership training and allows the message and allows people to challenge the message. I wouldn't know how to run a G without that. Other people might find it very easy. I had to go there twice a month to know what was going on. I had to go after the 4-hour class to the bar and hang around for 2 hours, drinking beer with them to know how they felt. And I could bring stuff back and then talk about it some more and refine the message. Schmoozing is an important part of running a company.
What do you mean by schmoozing?
I mean that when you start out a meeting Monday morning that's pretty critical on a budget review or something like that, we spend the first half an hour or so talking about what happened on the weekend. Did you see Tiger Woods sink that putt? Did you see Michigan win this game or that game? Did you see any? I mean, it's a family grocery store atmosphere. It is not. Business is a game. It's not some serious, pompous ass thing.
You've done a great job in projecting your personality and letting us know what kind of a person Jack Welch is. And we want to do a bit more of that. So hold on for a second, because we're going to hear a little bit more about the personal background here of Jack Welch. Here it is.
Everything we are doing in the service arena has the potential to be another service shop.
잭 웰치는 강한 CEO로 알려져 있죠. 적극적이고 아주 솔직합니다. 이런 성격은 어머니한테서 물려받은 거죠.
I think my life was formed by my relationship with my mother. She knew how to kick, she knew how to hug, she could build self-confidence. She was my life.
웰치는 1935년 매사추세츠 살렘에서 태어났습니다. 어머니한테서 교육과 스포츠의 열정을 물려받았죠. 웰치 아버지는 기차 차장이었습니다. 미국 대기업의 살아있는 상징이 된 웰치 회장의 집안은 노조와 민주당을 지지했죠.
Look, I could be a union leader. I could have gone either way, probably. I might not get elected, I don't know, but it's tougher in their business to get elected. He get picked.
웰치는 어렸을 때 골프를 배웠고 평생 해오고 있습니다.
He went back and forth with the big shots in the commute. And they were always talking about their golf games on the weekend. So he said, geez, he must have figured out, hey, you better learn how to play golf. You can do that all your life.
웰치 회장은 그렉 노먼을 한타 차이로 이긴 적도 있었습니다. 물론 홀에서 더 가까운 자리에서 친 걸 인정했죠.
We were just two of us sitting there having lunch, and all of a sudden he just jumped straight up, went roaring out of the room, and came back with the golf card that recorded the score where he had beaten Greg Norman. And that event was, he could not resist showing that card. Now, I'm not the only one that's seen it. A lot of other people have seen that card.
웰치는 고등학교 때 하키와 골프팀의 주장을 맡았고 매사추세츠 대학에서는 화학을 전공하고 일리노이 대학에서 박사학위를 받았습니다. 제너럴 일렉트릭에 합류한 건 25살이었는데 그 후 아주 빠르게 승진을 했죠. 웰치의 자서전에 따르면 그는 학교에서 가장 똑똑한 학생은 아니었지만 맡은 일은 언제나 해결했습니다.
He can take people in the GE organization who might have been in awe of some other type of CEO, and he can get them to open up, and because he opens up himself. And you get some guarded type or somebody that's mouthing PR baloney or something of the sort, and they're not going to get any feedback from the troops. And Jack is, he says what's on his mind.
Nice to meet you guys. As you disappear.
웰치는 언제 어디서든 자신의 매력을 보여줍니다. 포드사의 전 CEO인 잭 내서는 파리에서 그를 만난 적이 있죠.
I stopped the car and rushed out and grabbed him right in the middle of the street, and we shook hands and we talked, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm glad you're here. We've got to rush in here. This shop has the best ties I've ever seen anywhere in the world. Let's go in and buy some ties." And he was enthusiastic about buying ties as he was on some recent acquisitions that he's made.
웰치 회장은 자녀들에게도 경쟁심을 키워주었죠. 아들 마크는 친구이자 트릴로지 소프트웨어의 CEO인 조 리만토와 스키를 즐겨 탔습니다. 두 사람은 스키 대회에서 20위 안에 들기도 했죠.
Jack was across the room and he hears this. And he comes over and he's like, "What are you guys talking about? What are you talking about? If we're going to do this, you guys are going to be first, you're going to be second, you got to be one or two. None of this top 20 stuff." And Mark came in first and I came in second.
웰치 회장의 어머니는 1966년 심장병으로 세상을 떠나 아들이 성공하는 걸 보지 못했습니다. 웰치 자신도 1995년 심장 수술을 받아야 했죠.
He called me one day because I'd had a coronary bypass, and he said, "Let me ask you a question. I'm going to go have a bypass." And he then proceeded for the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, asked me questions that you would be asked by anybody who was a little nervous about, is it painful? What's the shot like? How long are you out? Is it scary? As I was talking to him, I was thinking, oh, this tough man's human.
제너럴 일렉트릭의 심장이자 영혼이었던 그는 은퇴를 한 후 자서전을 발표해 710만 달러를 받았습니다. 책은 베스트셀러가 됐죠. 웰치 회장은 책이 젊은이들에게 도움이 되길 바라죠.
If this book does anything, it should tell a lot of kids, everyone's got a shot. Everyone's got a shot. That's what this tells you. Here's a guy that could be doing anything, and I end up running this company. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Jack, on the personal side, you were clearly strongly influenced by your mother. When she passed away, I am told that you retreated, if I can put it like that. You retreated from what had been a rather intense Catholicism. Forgive me for asking, but have you retreated from all spirituality?
No, I've retreated from a ritualistic spirituality, but I have it in my soul. I had a funny thing happen to me, as a matter of fact, the other day. I'll share it with you. I was walking back from a meeting I had on Park Avenue, and I was coming back to my office in Rockefeller Center at the time, and I had this, and the September 11th issue was in my mind. And I've walked by St. Patrick's probably 1,000 times in the last 10 years without going in. But somehow I had to go in, and I spent an hour in there by myself. Because I think we were all touched in some way by this thing, and this terrible thing. And for some reason, it was a sunny day. My life couldn't have been better. And I just had this incredible urge to go back in there.
1995, you had, I think, quintuple heart bypass surgery.
Right.
Was that a real change in life for you, a change in perhaps your spiritual approach?
No.
Did it have enormous meaning? Because clearly, when you have that kind of operation, do you not sense, perhaps for the first time in your life, your own mortality? And doesn't that make a difference?
You know what I thought, Stuart? Larry Bosty, my friend at Allied Signal, asked me, he said, "Jack, what were you thinking of just before they cut you?" I said, "Damn it, I didn't spend enough money."
No, wait a minute. Hold on. Come on.
I did.
No.
I did.
No.
I did.
No. Jack, sir, that is a very good line, But come on, as you're about to go for quintuple heart bypass
my sister is up
surgery,
there and she will defend that line.
your mortality never crossed your mind. It never crossed your mind that this is a major event. Your life is threatened.
It happened so fast that I honestly didn't think that. I literally, we all are products of our background. Yeah. And I didn't have two nickels to rub together, so I'm relatively cheap. And I always bought relatively cheap wine. And I always looked at the wine price in the restaurant. And I swore to God I'd never buy a bottle of wine for less than $100. That was absolutely one of the takeaways from that experience.
After the operation, you would not buy a bottle of wine for under $100. And before the operation, you wouldn't have been dead drinking a bottle of wine over $100.
Right.
Is that it?
That's about it.
Well, a life changed, clearly. Is there anything that you do today in your everyday life which you think your mother would reprimand you for? Apart from your retreat from Catholicism.
No, I think, for me, the tragedy of life is my mother would have so many scrapbooks now. I mean, she had a scrapbook if I came home from school with an A. So she'd have so many scrapbooks now, she'd have to have another house just to put the scrapbooks in. I think of her all the time, so I wouldn't do things that would in any way make her hurt. I'd try. She was my role model. I'm an unabashed fan of my mother. I mean, I'm a grown man, but here I am, an unabashed fan of my mother. She meant everything to me.
And she would have been very proud of you.
I think so.
You're happy with what you've done in life in light of the way your mother brought you up?
So without taking the best shot, I know how to take it this game of life. I did it as well as I could. I made mistakes. But I really like the person who's in this skin.
How are you going to spend your money now? I know. Let us mention the book. You got a $7 million advance for this book, and I believe that you donated it to charity.
I did.
Now, elsewhere in your business life, you have made a ton of money. How are you going to spend it?
A lot of it will go to charity. This book will raise $10 million totally with overseas rights. Every one of those dollars goes to inner city. That's primarily what I'll do.
Andrew Carnegie made a ton of money and gave almost all of it away, believing that inherited wealth was a curse for the next generation. Would you go that far?
No. I've got kids. I've got 8 grandchildren. I want them to have a great life. I don't think it's going to get in their way. I don't have greedy kids. I don't have kids that need material things. I'm very proud of my family. And God bless them. They got lucky. They got a dad that made some dough.
Let's move to our last question from as Chief Executive. This one comes from Mr. Michael Eisner, Chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company.
Now, I know, Jack, your answer to the question is going to be you want to encourage young, vital, new executives in General Electric. But in that you are the strongest, smartest CEO in America, why didn't you convince your board, as many states have now made retirement age later than 65, convince your board to move retirement from 65 to 70 or 75. Now, I'm 10 or 15 years away from that, so this is not a personal question. Just curious why you didn't lie down on the floor and say, hey, wait a second, I'm not ready to go.
Well, obviously, that was an alternative. And it was one that entered my mind for about a nanosecond. The facts are, you have to repart the plan. The facts are, an organization, people join GE expecting to move. My movement out created all kinds of opportunity for great people to do great things. And time for a fresh look. Look, after 20 years, probably after 15 or so, you start walking by things that somebody else will see in a different light. So what you need is a refresher. The nice thing is, the company's in good shape. My successor's comfortable with himself. He will, in fact, make changes as he should. And the company will be better off because we got a whole new set of eyes in a whole series of positions that revitalizes. Companies got to be revitalized. That's why schools change deans and do other things. The whole thing is to revitalize the process.
Maybe we should move on to your plans for what you're going to do after GE. Would you take a government job?
No.
Would you stand for elective office?
Absolutely no.
Why? Why so emphatic?
I want no part of it. I don't like the need for constant compromise. It doesn't fit my personality.
Do you plan to run another company? Would you start up a company? Would you take another role in business?
Well, I'm going to. I'm going to consult for several companies.
You're going to be happy doing that?
Yeah, I'm going to be thrilled doing it because I'm going to be doing some writing. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to try and compete for jobs with you, maybe.
No contest. You win.
No.
Will you? Okay. Reginald Jones, after you'd come in, he was quite free, I think, with advice as to what you were doing with GE. Would you do the same thing with Jeffrey Immelt? I want to put it delicately. Will you meddle?
I'm going to do exactly what Reg did. He taught me how to retire. He never called me. I called him. I don't intend to tell Jeff to do anything. I don't intend to meddle in any way, shape, or form. I'm gone. That's yesterday's fix. We turn the page on that part of life. We get on to another one. I root for him. I cheer for him. My stock is with him. But I will not meddle. I had a predecessor who really taught me how to turn the page and get on with life.
Well, Jack, shortly I'm going to be turning to the members of our audience, our future MBAs, for their questions to Jack Welch. But first, this look at the University of Michigan Business School.
지난 77년 동안 미시건 경영대학원은 미국을 이끄는 미래의 경영 지도자들을 배출했습니다. 이곳에는 900명의 학생들이 공부를 하고 있고 그중 4분의 1은 유학생들이죠. 1988년 이래 미시건 경영대학원은 비즈니스 위크지가 뽑은 미국 10대 경영대학원 중 하나였습니다. 현재 6위를 차지하고 있습니다.
Okay. Well, Jack, this is where we start the truly tough part of tonight's program because we're now going to ask our audience of future MBAs for their questions. Please step up to the microphone and give us your name and the question. Young lady, first off, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gary McWitty. I'm a business student here. My question is, in your book as well as this evening, you've talked about the 4 E's wrapped in a P. And how do you teach leaders the difference between creating an edge and creating fear in an organization?
I think that's a great question. I think the question is a value system. There are 4 types of managers. Talk about it all the time. One who has the values and makes the numbers. Love them, hug them, take them onward and upward. Second one doesn't have the values, doesn't make the numbers, get them out of there. That's easy too. The third one has the values, doesn't make the numbers, give them a second and third chance. The fourth one's the one you're talking about. The tough one. The horse's neck that makes the numbers on the backs of people. The go-to person in an organization. And an organization that doesn't root them out can't talk about values, can't talk about the human equation. And in our company, the turning point came when we took out people who were delivering great numbers and asked them to move on to other things because they were doing it by creating the atmosphere you just described.
Sir, your question.
Good evening, Mr. Welch. My name is Chris McCardle. My question is, over the last 4 decades of your leadership of General Electric, how have you and your family, particularly your spouse and your children, had to continue sacrificing to help you become what people have called the CEO of the century?
Well, we've lived a very good life. We've had a chance to work hard and play hard. I think there's always a discussion about balance, family, work balance. People have to define it in their own way as to what it means. In our case, It meant work like hell and always take a vacation in the summer and always ski in the winter. That was the way we did it. So we had a chance to do both, but we didn't dabble a little bit in either thing.
And our next question is from?
Hi, Mr. Welch. I'm Eva Skidmore, and my question is, does the GE leadership model translate across international borders? How do you move the bottom 10% out in countries where it's virtually impossible to do so?
There is no country that I've yet come to that's not possible. In Europe, for example, while it may take more time and be more expensive, it's done by every company in Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Walsh. My name is Greg Renievich. I'm a second-year MBA student. You talk a lot about leadership, and some would say that you've perfected the model of the leadership engine in the corporate world. Do you think that this model of measurement and rewards can be transferred into a government organization, for example, the education department?
I wouldn't want to try it. No, I think it's very hard. I really wouldn't know how to tackle it. Every time we go to a merit-based system, it's fought against. I would argue, probably unpopularly here, that the tenure system decays an institution. It's not a popular thing to say in the middle of a university. But I believe it. I believe it's the constant renewal process, the measurement, the expansion of one's ideas, the growth, the personal growth. That's what it's all about. Most government institutions don't encourage that. There's very little reward for it.
Hi, Mr. Welch. I'm Jeff Wilkins. I'm an MBA 1 here. Unlike Jack Nasser, I would like to know what the worst professional decision you've ever made is as a leader, when you realized it, and what you learned from it.
It's so easy. I mean, I bought Kidder Peabody Investment Bank, and I bought it in the midst of a time when I had bought RCA and bought ERCA. I was on a roll. So I bought this company. The culture was totally different. It didn't fit. It's a place where, investment banks are a place where the rowboats can make it to shore while the Titanic sinks. And GE is a place where every measurement's around GE winning as most important. That cultural difference was so great, the gap was so big, that we could never bridge it. And we could never integrate it into the company. It's a big mistake. And my lesson, culture counts a lot. I didn't make acquisitions in Silicon Valley in the 90s because I couldn't ever look an engineer in Milwaukee in the eye and tell him that we had to buy a BMW to get an engineer to show up for the company in Silicon Valley, but because he happened to be working in Milwaukee, he didn't get a BMW. I couldn't bridge that cultural gap between Silicon Valley and our company, and I didn't do that, and I stayed out of that place because of what I learned from Kidder Peabody. Culture counts.
Jack, if I may, my last question. What's your legacy of 20 years at GE? What is it?
If I had to say what it was, I would say we took an old-style, military-industrial, highly structured enterprise and created an informal atmosphere where everyone had a shot at reaching their dreams. A meritocracy that didn't look at race or gender or country of origin and gave everybody a shot. That did as much as you possibly could to get bureaucracy out. We didn't succeed 100%. My successor will be talking about bureaucracy 20 years from now when he retires. But we came to work every day, open to ideas from anywhere, trying to create the atmosphere of the informal corner grocery store in a large business, a family business that didn't count where you came from or how many stripes you have on your shoulders. It was all about you, your ideas, and your dreams, with the sky being the limit.
Jack, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank our guest, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, for joining us. And Jack, I think we now know why your book is called Straight from the Gut. Thank you very much. We hope this conversation has added something to the world's marketplace of ideas, because that's the business of CEO Exchange. I'm Stuart Varney. Thanks, everyone, and good night.
Thanks for everything. Hey, we're just going to go roll right into breakfast. Okay.